Trick or treat. There was a loud banging on my door after the words. I rolled my eyes and stayed seated, hoping whoever was at the door would go away. Trick or treat, the person yelled again, infuriating me. I grabbed the water gun from my room and went to open the door. It was a little boy dressed in the worst butterfly costume I had ever seen. I sprayed water on him and he ran away, crying and screaming. I felt accomplished and shut my door with a silly smile. I was 24 and lived by myself in the city. I hated holidays, Halloween especially. I just didn't see the point. People got dressed in silly costumes for a day to celebrate what? It was pointless to me. I was content staying at home watching Netflix. There was another knock on the door. I cursed under my breath. Why would these people not leave me alone? The knock came again, urgently. I picked my water gun up and went to open the door. I didn't get to see who was at the door because immediately as I opened it, the person rushed past me, making me lose my grip on the water gun. I frowned and I turned to yell at the person. Shh, you have to help me, please. It was a woman and she looked like she'd been crying. Her hair was a mess and her eyes were wide and frightened. She looked like she was in trouble. I groaned inwardly. I was a quiet guy and hardly talked to my neighbors. I didn't want any drama. Look, I don't know you. Whatever's going on with you is none of my business. I liked my solitary life and I didn't want any complications. This woman looked like a complication. She broke down in tears, explaining to me that she was running from her husband. He was abusive and would beat her up from time to time. She said that he got violent again and she got scared for her life, so she had to run away. It was then I noticed she was holding her left arm gingerly. After seeing my stare, she explained that he pushed her down the stairs and she landed on her arm, spraining it. I sighed and went over to get her some ice. She sat down on my sofa and I wrapped ice in a towel before handing it over to her. This is still none of my business. You have to go to the police. She shook her head violently. He'll kill me if I ever report him. I proceeded to tell her that it was an empty threat and there was nothing he could do behind bars. I told her she was too young to spend her life in torture. She looked to be in her late 20s. I know you're inside, Susan. We both froze and she whimpered, dropping the ice. Her husband had found her. I was torn. I didn't know whether to hide her or just dump her outside. My door just got kicked open and then Susan and I rushed over to our feet, looking towards the door. A huge man walked in. He pointed at Susan and ordered her to follow him. She stubbornly refused and moved behind me. Her breasts were shaky and I swore I could hear her heart beating faster. This man looked at me with eyes full of rage. I raised my hands and I told him to calm down. He was a really big guy and I was sure he would put me down if given the chance. So, it's you who has made her this confident. I opened my mouth in shock, explaining that I'd just met her for the first time and had no idea who she was. He shook his head disbelievingly and told Susan to follow him again. As she stayed where she was, he walked towards us, and I tried to walk away from his path. Susan's hand clutched my shirt and prevented me from moving. I knew he'd probably hit her when he got her back, and I got angry. Some people were sadists. She isn't your property. You can't just order her around. The man paused. What did you say? I swallowed at the look of his face and heard a commotion at my front door. About 2 kids were standing on my porch, each of them in costumes. They were little, couldn't be more than 10 years. They clapped their hands together, looking entertained. They thought we were putting on a show. In the time I was distracted, Susan's husband had closed in on us. He punched me in the stomach and I grunted, bending over in pain. I drove my shoulder into his middle, but couldn't manage to make him fall down. He brought up his hands and banged me on my back. My breath left me in a whoosh and I fell down wheezing. Call the cops, I yelled at Susan. She was trembling and I felt sorry for her. If this was the kind of torture she experienced, no wonder she was such a mess. He kicked me and the kids outside started cheering at Susan's husband, like it was a no-holds-barred WWE match going on. I lay on the floor trying to recover from the blows. I wanted to call the police, but my phone was out of my reach. I heard a scream and looked up. Susan was being yanked by her hair and her husband sneered in her face. The kids paused the cheering. Now they were starting to look scared. This is real. Get help, quick. Their tiny feet ran down my porch and I wished they found help soon. Susan's husband dragged her by the hair and was talking to her outside. I stood up, still huffing, and my eyes fell on the water gun. Call it a reflex or my stupidity. I sprayed water on his back. He looked at me and raged like a monster. He ran towards me, leaving Susan. Susan fell down and held her head crying. I sprayed him in his eyes and he yelled as the water disturbed his vision. I kicked him between the legs and he went down, face contorted in pain. I heard footsteps out my house and I looked up. A small and heavy man rushed in and surveyed the situation. Behind them were the children that I asked to get help. I looked at them with utter disappointment. This is what they brought me? To my surprise, this man sat on Susan's husband and he was unable to move. I sighed in relief. I called the police and they arrived soon. After calming Susan down, she narrated everything she had been through with her husband and promised to testify against him in court. I was given analgesic for the pain I felt and also told to get enough rest. Susan joined a support group for abused women and they helped her get over her ordeal. I checked on her from time to time. My experience made me despise Halloween even more, but also changed me a bit. I started a blog and channeled it towards helping people who needed help to voice out before it was too late.
I am here hiding from the cops. They know what I've done, but they don't know who I am. And neither will you. I am a private guy, but I'll tell you some general facts about me so that you'll get everything I'm going to lay out. As I said, I'm a quiet guy. I've never been the type to, stand out or talk to people out of the blue. I barely talk when other people approach me. I work in a gaming company as a techie. Yeah, I'm kind of a nerd. Because I never really developed social skills when I was growing up, I turned to computers, programming, and so on. I liked tech stuff. I like to create programs and games. I even made my first game, be it a simple one, when I was just 12 years old. I see that as a huge accomplishment. But let's get back to the current day. Although I work in a huge gaming company, I sit all day in a small room, far away from the main office and the other employees. And I take care of the system, more or less. No one knows my name. Some of them call me the IT guy, and that's just about it. But something happened 2 days ago. That's why I'm hiding. Ever since I worked here, I had a crush on my boss. I know it sounds weird, but believe me, if you'd see her, you'd have a crush too. Well, you can't anymore, but I'll tell you about that later. I think I like powerful women. Women who are in charge or something. All I know is that I wanted her so bad. I've only talked to her once. I mostly talked. She was busy with some paperwork. I was called up in her office to fix the router.
Hey, IT guy, come to my office right now. My router is acting up.
I heard on the little speaker I have in my office. Coming right up. Do you need... And before I could finish my question, the call ended. I knew that this was my chance. I couldn't see her any other time. So I grabbed a small camera and a microphone and put them in my pocket. As soon as I entered her office, I started sweating. Hello, you said you needed me to take a look at the router? I asked. But without even looking at me, she nodded. I didn't want to bother her, so I started working. As I did that, I also installed the camera and mic. I wanted to see her all day, and this was the only way. At that time, at least. 2 days ago, I heard an interesting phone call. She would mostly talk about work stuff, but this time it was personal. I heard her talking on the phone with a friend of hers. They planned to meet up after work. I even heard the address. So naturally, right after she left her office, I did too. I got into my car and followed her, but I stayed back so I wouldn't raise suspicion. I arrived at the building but didn't get out of my car. I watched her from behind my tinted windows. She met up with her friend and they both went in. I wonder if she thinks about me sometimes. I mean, I was at my best when I went into her office. That must have clearly left an impression, I said to myself while sipping on a can of soda. After about 2 hours, she came out and hopped into her car. She started driving and I went after her again, keeping my distance. She then went into a store to buy some clothes, but this time I didn't stay in the car. I got out and followed her in. I wanted to see her up close. I couldn't resist it anymore. But I didn't want her being startled, so I thought about being stealthy. I hid behind the clothes so she wouldn't notice me. Since there were a lot of people in the store, I lost track of her for a brief moment, and right after that, as I was looking around, I bumped into someone. It was her. Couldn't believe it. I actually touched her. "Excuse me," I said while looking in her eyes. "That's okay, I guess," she said. "Do I know you from somewhere?" she then asked. At that moment, my world fell apart. There I was, thinking that I left a good impression, only to come to the conclusion that she doesn't even know who I am. "No," I quickly replied and turned around, walking towards the exit. I was so embarrassed. I should have gone home in that exact moment, but something didn't let me. I had to be close to her. Then I followed her home. I had managed to get her address from the office records earlier and reached her place before she did. I could see her in the living room while she was getting undressed. I couldn't believe how great she looked. She had a body of a goddess. After about 2 hours, I guess she went to bed. I am not a bad guy, but something told me to go in, so I followed my instincts. I managed to open the back door, and there I was, inside her house. I started looking at photos she had placed all over the place. While I was doing that, I knocked down a lamp which broke on impact. The noise was enough to wake her up. "Who is there? I have a gun," she said while rushing down the stairs. I didn't try to hide or run away as I was confident she would understand my feelings for her. She immediately saw me and pointed the gun towards me. "Get out of here! Didn't I see you at the store earlier? Have you been following me? Are you some kind of stalker?" she said. I didn't appreciate all those accusations. "I work with you," I said. "Stay right there. I'll call the police." As I was standing there with my hands up, I saw another photo. It was her and a man. "Who's that?" I asked her. "My boyfriend." "Hello? 911? Yes, I have an intruder." She continued like it wasn't a big deal, like it wasn't something important, the fact that she was in a photo with a guy. When I heard the word boyfriend, I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I saw red in front of my eyes. How could she be so selfish? She had to be mine. So I attacked her in a fit of rage. She shot the gun, but missed me. I managed to grab it, and in the struggle, a bullet went into her stomach. She fell to the ground, bleeding. Her white robe turned red. I had blood on my hands. "I'm sorry. Are you okay?" I asked her, but she didn't respond. Blood started coming out of her mouth. She was coughing. Shortly after, I heard police sirens. Immediately, I managed to get out of the house, but I didn't leave. I stayed for a bit longer, looking through the glass so I could see what happened. Only after they investigated and declared her dead, I ran away. Now, I am at a secret location hiding. I don't want to get in trouble. I think I'll just wait here until everything clears up. Oh, the feeling of moving into a new apartment with the person you love. There's no feeling better in this entire world. After about 5 or 6 months of dating, me and John, the love of my life, decided to move in together. We were more than ready and above all else, more than excited. Since the moment we talked about it, we've been hunting for apartments left and right. It didn't take long and we finally found what we were looking for. It was a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a good part of town, and above all else, it had 2 parking spots, one for me and one for John. This was a rare commodity in our city since there were so many cars and virtually half of that number were parking spaces. Anyway, we talked to the landlord, and before we knew it, there we were. We were standing right in the middle of our new apartment. We couldn't believe it. "This is a special occasion. I think we should celebrate," John said, and I agreed with him before I kissed him. "Wait here. I'm gonna go get something," he told me before going into one of the bedrooms, looking for God knows what in our luggage. "Hold this glass, baby," he told me. John came back with 2 glasses and a bottle of expensive champagne. "For us and our future together," I toasted before sipping on the champagne. Everything was perfect. We were both doing really well. He had an office job working for a big firm as an attorney. This meant that he had a pretty big salary, but the downside was that he was most of the time at work. I missed him so much each time, but I knew it meant a lot to him, so I couldn't say anything. My job was a little bit different than his. First of all, I was working from home. Actually, I could work from anywhere in the world. I was a freelancer, designing logos and websites. I used to have a corporate job, but then I got into design and I quit. I never looked back, and I've never been happier. I actually made more than I used to. Anyway, we drank the champagne, unpacked, and went into the bedroom. To be honest, we were making quite a lot of noise, but it wasn't late. It was about 9 p.m. or something. While we were, doing our thing, we could hear something. It was like something in the wall, like a scratching or something. First we thought it may be some sort of animal blocked in there, but the wall was solid. How could the animal even go into the wall? While we were talking about the noise, the weird sound stopped. "What's up there?" I asked John. "It's a vent. This is weird. Why would a vent be in the bedroom? Maybe it's for the air conditioning," he told me. It was really high up, and we couldn't reach to see what's up with it. John needed a ladder, but unfortunately, we didn't have one that night, so he decided to check it out in the next couple of days when he would buy one. Anyway, the night went amazing, and before we knew it, we had to wake up and go to work. John woke up earlier than me, but I could hear him, so I opened my eyes just as he was dressing in his suit. I told him he looked good, and then he leaned over and kissed me. It was so romantic. Our lives finally began to take shape, and from the looks of it, it was going to be amazing. Before he left for work, he told me that he made coffee and it's in the kitchen, and also, he told me another thing. He was going to be late tonight. He had a difficult case he needed to take care of, and he would be home only after 11 p.m. "Don't wait up for me. You go to sleep. Oh, and make sure you eat," he caringly told me. "Of course I'm going to wait up for you. You're not going to sleep without a goodnight kiss," I replied. Then he was out the door. I slowly got out of bed and drank my coffee. The day went on as usual. I talked with some of my clients, created some drafts, cleaned the house a little. It was pretty normal. As I was working on a project at around 8 p.m., knowing that John was going to be late, I heard the front door. I jumped out of my chair thinking it's John. The big smile on my face, I went into the living room and I watched how the doorknob started turning. But something was odd. The doorknob was turning, but he wasn't coming in, the door being locked. "John?" I asked from the other side of the door. No answer, so I asked again. "Did you forget your key?" After I did that, the doorknob stopped turning. Instead, loud banging on the door scared me so bad that I took a few steps back. "John!" I screamed, but the banging became louder and louder. It was like the door was coming off its hinges. Realizing that he told me he'll come home after 11 p.m. and it was only 8, I knew it wasn't him. It was an intruder. Someone was trying to break into my home. The next thing I did was to grab my phone and dial 911. "Hello? Someone is trying to break into my home. I'm alone. Help me!" I told the officer on the phone. He said that someone will be there shortly and I should stay on the phone. Shortly after, the banging stopped, but I remained on the phone. After that, someone knocked at my door. I freaked out again, but the operator said it was a police officer. So I slowly opened my door, and he was right. I told him everything that happened. He checked around the building and couldn't find anyone. He advised me to stay inside with my door locked until my husband comes back. John finally came home, and he was surprised to see me up at that late hour. "What happened? Why are you shaking?" he asked while grabbing my hand. "Someone tried to break in. I was so scared, and I called the police," I said to him. Fortunately, nothing else happened that night. The next evening, he came back early at around 6 p.m., which was something rare for him. We had dinner, and it was a quiet night. The next day, he was supposed to work late again. It was 10:30 p.m., and I heard the doorknob turn. I called the police immediately, and as soon as I started talking with them on the phone, the banging on the door stopped. They came, as they did on the first night, and couldn't find anything. The same thing happened the next night as well. I felt like I was going insane. "Ma'am, are you sure someone was banging on your door?" the policeman asked me. He started to think that I was imagining things. "Yes, I'm not crazy. Someone tried to break into my home 3 times, I yelled at him. But then I apologized for getting so angry. The weekend came, and finally, John wasn't going to the office. He was home with me all day. At around 8 p.m. on a Saturday, he saw that we were out of pasta. "I'm going to the store down the street to get some pasta. I feel like eating some delicious carbs this evening," he told me. I also had a craving for pasta, so off he went. After about 15 minutes, my doorknob started turning again. Then, as usual, the banging started. I freaked out and called John. He came back running from the store, and what he saw on our main door made his blood run cold. It was a photo of me pinned to the door. The photo had a big X marked on my face. More shockingly, we saw that the door of our next-door neighbor was half open. None of us had the courage to go in there and investigate. Shocked and frightened, we called the cops. The police, on investigation, found several photos of me in my neighbor's drawer. Each photo had blade and knife marks on it. However, there was no sign of him and his belongings. Apparently, this man was living alone since many, many years. Nobody in the building knew what he did or where did he go. The police promised me that they would give us a call if they find any leads. We haven't heard from them yet, but John and I have been very cautious since then.
I've never been one to socialize with people. I've always been a nerd and liked computers from an early age. And instead of going out with friends, I would watch YouTube all day long. I had a few favorite creators. They were mostly prank channels. I would laugh all day long while eating ice cream at my desk and would even forget to go down for dinner sometimes. I was that immersed in those prank channels. I had thought that maybe I could make one for myself. There was one channel that I started following when it only had 200 subscribers, and it grew rapidly, blowing up almost overnight. Why couldn't I do this? I said to myself. It's not that hard, those pranks really hit the spot, but they are simple. Also, this could help me with my anxiety around people. Maybe I'll become more confident. It's a win-win situation. I continued to build myself up, and it was a really great idea. But I had some planning to do first. I started to research what type of pranks do people like, because I didn't want to start on the wrong foot. I wanted a rapid growth like the other channel. I saw that the most popular pranks at the time were the ones where someone would dress up as a bush and scare people as they walked by. I thought that was pretty easy enough. I stayed up all night to make my costume, and by the morning, it was perfect. I went out on the street and I filmed the entire day. People would scream, but after they saw that it was a prank, they would all laugh, and I would point to the camera, showing them where it was. "You're crazy." I thought I was pretty brave, but it seems like even a bush can scare me, one guy said before we both had a laugh. I had a lot of fun, and as the day passed, I started to become more and more confident, and I actually liked talking to people. It was like I discovered a side to myself that I didn't know I had. I was happy being outside. It was something new to me. Things were going great, and before I knew it, I already had 200 subscribers. I made a special video thanking everyone who supported me, even though it wasn't an impressive number. But all I thought about was that I managed to be at the exact same spot where the channel that blew up was. I already saw myself being successful and reaching over 100,000 subscribers, if not more. My channel was growing at a really fast rate and I wasn't going to stop. Things went amazing for a while and I started to get recognized in my hometown. There were even some people who followed my channel very closely and would come up to me so we could take a picture. I would feel like a celebrity every time. "You're that guy, right? From YouTube. I love those pranks. Me and my friends watch you all the time," they would tell me, and my heart would fill with joy. One day as I was doing my usual prank, this time climbing up a tree and throwing a mannequin down in front of people, as if it were a guy who fell from the tree, the prank caught on well, but one guy got really mad. I could not believe what was going on. No one had gotten mad before. They would normally get a little startled, but they would laugh about it in the end. But no, not this guy. After I did the prank and saw that it wasn't a real person, he flipped out. "You idiot! I should throw you from the tree, or I should break your neck right here on the sidewalk. How about that?" he said to me. Then he took the mannequin and he threw it at me, calling me names and threatening to kill me. "I'll kill you. Get over here," he said while taking a few steps forward. "Come on, man, it's just a prank. Relax." I also said that I have it all on camera, so I advised him not to be violent. As I came down, he punched me in the face before kicking me in the ribs. I was lucky that two men passed by and stopped him. "Hey, stop it. Why don't you pick on someone your own size?" the men told him, and he ran away. "Thank you. I didn't know what that guy's problem was. It was just a prank," I told the guys. "Be careful here, kid. There's a lot of weirdos," they told me before walking away. I got up and went to my car to go home, but first I wanted to get something to eat. I kept thinking that even though I got beat up, this could be the video to make me blow up after blurring the guy's face. I went to my favorite sandwich shop and I grabbed a couple. They were small, but really good. The sun set and it started to get dark. I was driving home when I saw that a car was behind me. So I did some turns to make sure he wasn't following me, but a car was close up behind mine. I freaked out, thinking that it might be that guy. I didn't see its number plate because it was so dark, so I stepped on the gas. Not before long, I lost the car. I felt relieved and drove to my house. I left the car in the driveway and just went inside. After a quick shower, I sat down to edit the videos on my computer. As I was slicing and adding music, the screen went blank, and the entire house actually went dark. It was a power outage. I got up from my chair to see if the fuse box was in order. It was in the basement, so I took my phone and I used the flashlight. As I went down the stairs, someone pushed me from behind and I started to fall forward, stopping when I hit the bottom of the stairs. I felt dizzy, and before I could get up, I was lifted up by my collar by someone and thrown around the basement. I pointed my flashlight toward him and there he was, that weird guy from the prank video. He started punching me in the face repeatedly and I wasn't able to defend myself. "I told you I'd kill you, didn't I? You're dead," he said to me while hitting me in the eyes. He beat me up bad. I couldn't see with one eye and the other one started to swell up. I found an old piece of wood with a nail in it, and as he came to kick me while I was down, I stuck it in his leg. "You little jerk," he yelled and fell to the floor in agony. That was my chance to get up, so I did it and I ran to the stairs. The man got up quickly and managed to grab my leg as I was halfway up the stairs. "You're dead. You don't get out of here alive," he shouted. I managed to kick him in the face with my free leg and he fell down the stairs. Then there was silence. I couldn't hear anything. I pointed my flashlight toward him and there he was, his eyes wide open and he was groaning. I went to him and I saw that he couldn't move. He must have hit something in his spine and gotten paralyzed. I called the cops and they quickly came to my place and they got him out of the basement on a stretcher. The guy wasn't dead, but he couldn't move. You're lucky to get out of this thing alive. I would cool it with the pranks for a while. My colleague will be talking to you at the hospital. Post-recovery, we expect you to report to the station. You got yourself into a mess, mister.
I turned on the TV to break the silence. I was the only one at home. My parents went for a function. I would have stayed over at a friend's place if I had known earlier that my parents would be late. I went to prepare something to eat before I went to sleep. The light in the kitchen flickered and I froze. It stayed normal and I continued what I was doing. A sound made me drop the bowl I was holding in fright. I went to peek out the window, hiding behind the curtain. I only saw a cat. I scolded myself for being too jumpy. I ate my meal, watching reruns of Family Guy. The lights flickered again, and I hugged my knees to my chest, watching the lights as it came on and off. I said a silent prayer that the power should not go out and held my breath in anticipation. The lights stayed on, and I sighed in relief. Though it was just getting dark, it would be worse if I had to stay alone in the dark. Our house was situated farther from the other houses in the neighborhood, so there was a higher chance of not being able to get help in time. My dad was a politician, so I was used to them having to go out. A shadow passed the side of the house and I jumped. I calmed myself down, thinking it was just the cat. The time was 8:24 p.m. People would be in their homes, doing whatever it was that people did in the evening. Another shadow passed and I frowned. That shadow was too big for a cat. My ears perked up. I could hear voices. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice shaky. The voices stopped abruptly. Then came a knock on the door. I remained seated, glued to the sofa. I was sure the door was locked. My heart started to beat faster, and I got very scared. "Who is it?" I squeaked. "Open the door, dear. We just want to have a quick discussion." It was a man's voice. I didn't know who it was. I was in trouble. I didn't know what to do. I just stared at the door in fear, wondering if this was how I was going to die. The person at the other side of the door rattled the handle and cursed loudly. "No one's here to save you. The sooner you open this door, the better," another voice said. Crap, there were two of them. Now my heart went into overdrive. I stood up on rubber legs and crept to the kitchen. I picked the pepper spray and a kitchen knife. I held out the kitchen knife in one hand and the pepper spray in another, my hands trembling. The door started to shake as something heavy hit it continuously. I gasped. They were going to break in. I had only watched things like this in the movies. It had never been a personal experience. The door gave way, and two masked men stormed in. When I saw that they had guns, my arms became as limp as noodles. The knife and pepper spray fell to the floor, clattering. I opened my mouth and screamed. The shorter one slapped me, effectively shutting me up. He covered my mouth with duct tape. After tying me to one of the dining chairs, they made their way across the house, stuffing our valuable things into their duffel bags. I spied the knife I had dropped on the floor about 2 feet away from me. I hopped on my chair, trying to move it closer. I stopped when they came back to the living room. "Where's all the cash?" the taller one asked. I shook my head. I didn't know where my parents kept their money. Probably in the bank, like all smart people. When he asked me and I shook my head, he hit me with the butt of the gun. The duct tape muffled my scream. The shorter one stood over me while the other man went inside. I eyed the knife, trying not to make it too obvious. The man watching me grew bored and began to walk around the living room. He took a vase and put it into his duffel bag. He didn't notice that I had inched closer to the knife. I used my toes to carry the knife up, my face staring straight ahead. My toes lost their grip and the knife clattered to the floor. The man's head swiveled to me. He shook his head when he saw the knife. "Pesky little girl, wasn't going to hurt you before, but now you're just begging for it." He walked up to me and I tried to move away. I only managed to move the chair a few inches before he grabbed my hair and wrenched my head back. He slapped me and I tasted blood in my mouth. My eyes watered from the pain. He slapped me again, clearly enjoying himself. "Phil, what are you doing?" the other man asked as he came back to the living room, his duffel bag full to the point of tearing. I spied some of my mom's jewelry hanging off the sides. Phil's grip on my hair tightened. "She was trying to break free. I had to teach her a lesson," he said. Phil asked if they had stolen enough, and his partner replied that the jewelry he took must be worth a fortune. I knew they were. My mom was in love with shiny things. My dad was all too happy to pay for it. He loved his wife and always did his best to keep her happy. "We have what we want. Leave her. Let's go." Phil hit me again before they left, dragging their bags behind them. Phil waved to me before closing the door behind them. That was the last thing I remembered before darkness took over. My parents said they found me like that, unconscious on the chair. They had left the function in a hurry when one of our neighbors called to ask if they knew the men leaving the house. The police were already looking for them. I had no information to give them. They wore their masks throughout. I was taken to the hospital. I had never gone through anything as scary as what I went through the night before. My parents took me to see a therapist who helped me deal with the trauma. I developed anxiety if I stayed alone for too long. It wasn't long before my parents hired a bodyguard for me. Since that day, I have been consistently trying to let go of the fear and troubled thoughts. I know it is only a matter of time and I would be able to put the nightmarish incident behind me. However, it is not that easy.